Welcome to another episode of Kookievision. In this video, I'm going to be making a heart container from the Legend of Zelda games. So I've got a heart-shaped sugar cookie here to start, and I'm casting an image of the heart container onto my cookie from my projector that I have above, and I just hook it up to my laptop to get the image that I want. And as you can see here, not all hearts are the same exact shape. So I want to trace the red part of the heart onto my sugar cookie to get it the same size and shape as the heart container. So I have a red piping consistency royal icing here, and it is fitted with a number 2 tip, and I'm just outlining the very outside with red, and I'm going to be filling it in with a flooding consistency red royal icing of the same color, and this time in a flooding consistency that I have here in a squeeze bottle. And I am using a squeeze bottle that has a coupler attachment. Anytime I use a squeeze bottle with a coupler attachment, it's always a number 3 tip. Otherwise, any sort of squeeze bottle will work for this part. And I'm just using my scribe tool here to even everything out and get all that icing towards the edges. And you want to let this icing crust over for at least 2 or 3 hours. You don't need the icing to be completely dry underneath like I would with a lot of other cookies. This actually helps with cratering if the icing below isn't completely dry. I'm not exactly sure why this is, but in my experience I found that I experience a lot less cratering in this gold layer if the icing below is not completely dry. So just keep that in mind. You don't need to let it set overnight or anything like that. And next I'm casting an image again of the heart container onto my cookie, and I'm doing this gold layer here. And I'm using a piping consistency gold color here. This is actually Americolor gold, so it's a very nice rich yellow color. And this is a piping consistency, and I'm piping it on with a number 2 tip, and I'm just going over the entire thing and outlining all of those gold details. Now I do understand not everybody has a projector for doing this onto their cookies, which totally makes sense. I actually didn't get a projector until probably the 3rd year of cookie decorating, so I totally get that. There's other ways that you could totally do this. You could freehand it using your piping consistency royal icing here, if you think you can pull that off, or you could make a stencil on cardstock and then cut it out with an X-Acto knife and then just trace it onto your cookie using a food pen, and then just tracing it with your piping consistency here. Or you could always just freehand it with a food pen and then just trace it onto your cookie with the piping consistency here as well. Now when it comes to filling in this gold area, the thing with such small spaces like this very thin space, is the fact that it might crater on you. And for that reason, I'm using a flooding consistency here. This is the same color that I used to outline, except a flooding consistency, but I made sure that the flooding consistency is a little bit more on the thicker side, meaning that you can get a lot more icing into that space without it just kind of flooding over the edges. If it was on the very, very thin side, you'll have a problem with the icing kind of flooding over those lines that you created, and also cratering, which is a huge problem with such tiny little spots like this. So you really want to build up that layer, and the only way you can do that is if your flooding consistency is nice and thick, just like this. You want it nice and puffy, and you really want to get that tip of the squeeze bottle into those spaces to avoid things like air bubbles. And this is also why I let my flooding consistency red underneath only set for at least 2 or 3 hours, because I want that layer underneath to kind of still be a little wet underneath the crusted layer, and that really helps with cratering as well. And if you're not familiar with what cratering is, it's this little problem you have, especially with small spaces like this, where when your icing dries, it actually sinks in the middle, and you'll notice things like holes or cracks, and it just really doesn't look very nice, especially in this sort of design. Sometimes it will work in your favor, like if you're doing ears or anything like that, where the middle of the ear might be a little lower than the rest of it anyways, but in this case you really want to avoid cratering as much as possible. Now I've let this design dry completely. I've actually let it dry overnight, and I'm taking a nice clean brush here and going over all of those gold areas with a mixture of soft gold hybrid luster dust. This is by Roxy and Rich. You can use any gold luster dust that you like. And I've mixed it with a touch of vodka just to make it paintable. And you don't have to worry about the vodka because it will evaporate, so you don't have to worry about alcohol content in this case. And I'm just going over all of those yellow or gold areas and giving it a nice shine. And that's why I like to use a very similar color to the luster dust that I'm using above, just because it helps the luster dust go a lot longer way, and you don't have to use so much to get that nice color that you want. It's just basically for some shine. And in the end of the video I'll show you the final product, and you'll see that the red part also has a shine to it, and I forgot to actually do this in the video, but I basically went over the red part while it was still wet, just kind of gave it a spritz of a super pearl hybrid luster dust. I think I used, actually it was a sparkle dust by Roxy and Rich, or you could use a ruby red luster dust as well. It would look just as nice, or you could just leave it the way it is like I'm doing here, but I wanted to give that red part a little shine. I just forgot to kind of catch it on video for you guys, so. And to get that shine on the red, all you have to do is put some luster dust into a dust pump and spritz that red flooding consistency royal icing while it's still wet, and it will adhere to it. Or you can do the same thing as I did to the gold layer and just mix some red luster dust with some vodka and just paint it on the red after it's dried and before you do the gold layer. So thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to like me on Facebook and on Instagram. Bye!